I'll go ahead and get started with everybody else here. Um, firstly, I want to thank you guys for coming and being a part of this, and hopefully, you guys gain a lot from tonight. Um, firstly, we've got Cam Heineman, 25 total years of coaching, fourth as a head coach at Tri Central. Had almost every grade level, including C team, JV, and varsity over two different schools at Madison Grant and Tri Central. All right, big fan. We've got Matt Moore, 6 year as head coach at Warsaw, 17 years overall. He's got an awesome record at Warsaw, 89 and 37 with the 706 winning percentage. Highest winning percentage and most wins by Warsaw head coach in the first 5 years. Back-to-back sectional champs the last 2 years. Back two NLC championships in 21 and 25. Previous stints as head coach at Fishers, Kokomo, and Mount Vernon Nazarene University. And then lastly, we've got Tommy Strine, second year at Tri-West, 15th year of coaching overall, went 18 and 7 last year. Prior to Tri-West, spent 10 years coaching at the Division I level, with stops at the University of Richmond, American U, Lamar, Cleveland State, Chicago State, and IUPUI. Got his first coaching with AAU and the Spiece Gym Rats and Indy Heat. Was a varsity assistant at Marion for one season. So got an awesome lineup here, and a lot of things to get to. I guess probably should have introduced myself. I'm Kaylee May. Used to be head coach at Danville for 12 years on the girls' side, and decided that I was going to step out for this little guy here. I am still serving as the IBCA president-elect and will be president this upcoming year. So I am in charge of the mentor program. Today we are focusing on drills, offense, defense, and scouting. So a lot of good things to get to here. I want to start off with drills. That's going to be our main focus. And I know that we had talked about only specifying a couple coaches to focus on one area. But since we've only got three experts, I'm going to let you guys just kind of talk. First question here is, what drills do you run every day and why? So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our experts.
I guess I can start with that. So we have a lot of things that we do every day, but we kind of changed our practice plans around this year. We were off to slow starts last year, so this year instead of doing our vitamins, which is our basic, we do our ball screen defense in that, we do our ball handling, and then we do our passing in that. We move that to farther back in practice. We start right out of the gate. We do 5-on-5, 4-minute games, or we do 5-on-4 transition right out of the gate. So the guys get out of school, they go and get dressed, they get stretched, and we huddle. And then right out of the huddle, they got to get going right away. We did it a little bit towards the end of the season last year, helped us get to quicker starts this year. But then we also will, in the middle of practice, we'll take a break. We'll go into the locker room, talk about like the first half of practice. Just do some different things with that. Like, hey, the energy was good here. This is what we're getting ready to do in the second half of practice. Can we pick the energy back up? Kind of simulate a halftime experience, and get them back out. And we're going to try that, and hopefully that'll help us get better starts to the third quarter as well. So we've been doing that every day, and the guys have been responding pretty well to it.
Sorry, I just got on. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. I can't tell. Okay. Matt Moore, Warsaw. Man, an everyday thing. Like, there's so many things I feel like we look at as coaches, and I think we're problem solvers. And so we may do a lot of things really, really well, that we probably live in on a day-to-day or weekly basis. But at the same time, I think for us, it's just the skill work in shooting. I think, it's the one area that we have to continue to evolve as a program, but it's an area that is going to determine a lot of the outcomes of every game that we're in. So we spend a lot of time every day shooting the basketball, and it's competitive shooting. It's team goal oriented. It's, really difficult challenges. And I think that's helped us. And everywhere I've been, you can look at our numbers, and our numbers from year 1 to year 3 on to year now 5 at Warsaw have just continued to grow and grow and grow. So If I had to pick the one thing that we are going to live on, the hill we're going to die on, it's going to be shooting the basketball.
Yeah, we started doing our shooting at before school. So we'll have our shooting groups, and we make them into two groups. You're mandatory to go twice a week, but you can go up to four. We have them four, and my assistants usually run it. And we do our skill work in there, but we also do our shooting groups, and you guys will get in. Like we do, like Coach Garrett knows, our Baylor shooting, which is you get 10 minutes, one rebounder, one ball, and you have to make 100 threes in that minute. And we have a bell in our gym that if you get that 100, you get to ring the bell, and then you get to go from there. And so um, we make a big deal of that. But that helped us a lot last year. We started doing that in January last year, and we saw our percentages go up a ton because guys were getting shots up every day. And then we also, I didn't have to take time in practice to be able to do it. So, I don't know how much gym space you guys have, but we have one court that we can use over here. Kaylee, you probably know from being at Danville, would come over to Tri West. There's one court over here, so we share it with wrestling and girls basketball and then freshman teams and everything. So we moved all of our shooting to the morning, which helps a ton.
I think Cam's having some trouble getting on. Did anybody else have issues with the passcode? Okay, his is saying he needs a passcode, so I'm gonna send this to him. There we go. So thank you for you guys for that input. So I guess, sounds like we're doing a lot of shooting, trying to incorporate just skill development. Um, two different types of questions here. One is what drills do you try to use to reinforce offensive or defensive systems? And then secondly here, how do you modify your drills based on the different age groups or skill levels that you're working with? Because we all know you can have a lot of range of skill within your program at one time.
Hey, Kayla, before we move to that, can I ask one question?
Go for
it. Coach Strine, when you take that break in the middle of practice, first, how long are your practices? And then when you take that break in the middle, is it just 10 minutes like a halftime would be of a game?
So our practices are 2 hours, and I usually take it right at that hour break. And I usually only do it for 5 minutes, just because again, like I can't like if I have practice from 4 to 6 and I go to 6:01, I'm getting an email about it. So I have to make sure I'm to that. So usually I'm just going, I'll do that first hour, take a 5 minute break, and then the last 55 minutes we're full go again. And what I try to do a lot of times is like if we're going like our offensive review, that's usually not as competitive or anything like that. I'll do that right before the break, go in and do the break, and then hit them right out of the locker room with a 5-on-4 transition drill, or like we do circle rebounding. So it's like 5 guys in the paint, 5 outside, and they circle around. And you got to get 3 in a row to get out. And I'll do that something competitive right away, get their juices going where they have to compete right away. And we keep score of everything. So whatever we do coming out of the locker room, you keep score, and the loser runs, and it's been good for us.
What was the original question coming back, Coach? You said something about the age group specific, and then what else?
Drills to emphasize like your offense or your defense, I think it was.
Man,
right?
I think for me, the problem is I love offense. I think it's a great game because you can be continuity based, you can be motion based, you can be player specific based. There's just so many ways to play offense, and I think for me, the traditional way of the whole part whole method of how you instruct. We spent a lot of time in three on three small sided games. We'll add a 4-on-4. We started to play a lot of the 4-on-4 FIBA stuff where the ball's going to be live out of the net. We outlet it as if it's an offensive rebound, and then we have to get matched and mixed. And so some of that stuff has been very beneficial for us in helping teach offensive spacing. We'll put limits on dribbling and certain guys. One of the stats that I started keeping track of that we value, especially if you have a really good player that is very ball dominant, is we call it attempted assists. And so, our top 2 guys that are going to take a majority of the shots, we want them to get other guys' shots. And so we'll chart attempted assists. And so our best player this year, Meidenberger, his goal is to get 8 attempted assists a game. That means he's being aggressive. And so we try to include that in what we do in practice. And then For the younger grades, I think it's age specific, obviously, but I don't think you really want to ever box a kid into a position as a middle school kid or even an elementary kid. I think dribbling and passing and shooting are the three things that every kid needs to learn at all levels. And so the more you can allow kids to grow into those things, I think it's better for the whole group. And as they grow with size and their skill continues to improve, I think you get a lot more versatility than offensively to do things.
Yeah, we in the fall in the summertime we play a lot of 5-on-5 no dribble, just to kind of get guys to learn how to pass and cut and slip, and then we'll gradually work up to one dribble, half court. But then during the season, what we like to do is we like everything. Like if we're doing an offensive drill, like let's say we're doing, our 5-on-0 offense, where we're just running through our plays. We always transition back to defense. We have something we call pirate drill, which is you run through a 5-on-0 play and you put another team. You put two players just in front of the hash, and then three on the baseline, and a coach will throw the ball to any one of them. So as soon as you run your play and you score, you got to sprint back as opposed to just sprinting back across the free throw line. It puts you in the positions that you will be in a game, right? Like, hey, I run this play, I end up underneath the basket. I got to be able to sprint back and find my man. So we always transfer back to that. And then any defensive drill, we always transition down into offense. I want to play fast, and so that's like part of it too. Is even if we're doing shell, you go through your shell and you get a stop, and as soon as you get that, you got to outlet and go down to the other end, and you run one of our secondary transition on the other end. So I just football is like you can run all your offensive plays, you never have to transition back to defense right away. Basketball is a consistent game, so you have to be able to do both, and so just drilling guys to be able to do both of those things. Is a point of emphasis for us. So we never have like, hey, this is just a defensive drill. Hey, this is just an offensive drill. Everything we do transitions back into defense or offense, depending on which one you're doing first. And then for the younger ages, I've been blessed. We have over 330 kids in our youth program right now, kindergarten through fifth grade. And so I actually meet with the coaches once every 2 weeks for each individual grade, go over where they're at, try to figure out what they need to work on. You don't want to say, hey, this is what I want you guys to work on. And then not, if they're not there, move on to the next thing. So just trying to figure out where they're at, I think is a big thing. Because and if they can't dribble and pass and shoot, they're young, in second and third grade, there's no point in us putting in a bunch of offenses or defenses and stuff like that. We got to get that figured out first. So getting the feedback from my youth coaches, I think, is the most important thing for me, just that way I can try to put together plans based on where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff. Hey, Cam, I saw that you were able to hop on here. Do you want to add anything before we switch topics here on just basically, I don't know when exactly you came in. So talking about just like drills in general that are really consistent in your program and add to what you do.
Yeah, and I apologize for being getting on here a little
No
late.
problem.
I'm not a big Zoom user, so getting all that figured out. But yeah, I do a lot of the same thing that Coach Strine talked about, especially with Shell. We will always incorporate Shell into a transition offense, and we'll even go so far as to uh, move it into a full court press type of thing, or whatever the offense is we're working on that particular day. I've also got another one that we call running groups, and it's not mine. I stole it, but you have three teams, and it's constantly you're on the floor for two possessions. And it's essentially a shell drill, and then transitioning to offense. And then the next team sets up for defense at the other end of the floor. Once you play at the far end, whoever rebounds the ball takes off to the other one. But we'll do that a lot with Shell, and I found it a lot more effective. Not necessarily because the kids learn more from it, but it's because they want to play offense. Defense isn't always the fun thing to do. So when you can throw in, okay, well, you grab a stop or a rebound, now you can go play some offense, and you seem to get a little more. At least we do a little harder effort on the defensive end. Another one that we will run every day, I call Alford rebounding, so you can guess where I got it. But when Alford was at Iowa, he ran this quite a bit, and it's essentially 2-on-2. You put two offensive guys in certain positions on the floor and two defensive guys. The coach shoots it, and it's essentially a closeout and a box, or we do a hit and get type of rebounding, and that's what the game is. And then at that point, it's 2-on-2, but nobody really cares what the score is because what we're scoring is the effort on rebounding. So we'll do those two things quite a bit every day. We spend a lot of time on defense, so we do a lot more probably defensive things every day than we do offense.
Stuff. Yeah, I was the same way when I coached. I tried to make every drill we did into transition just because I think the pace of the game has changed so much for kids, and that's just
Mhm.
a huge emphasis. So, like to hear that you guys are all pretty similar on that. So with that being said, we're going to work our way into offense. Um, let's start with our younger crowd. How did you teach spacing and just flow of offense with your younger kids and your youth programs? For some of our coaches that are having to create that. And then we'll kind of get into, some of the offensive systems that you run. So, anybody want to go ahead and start us off here?
I think the two hardest things to introduce to people, um, the first being spacing and the second being cutting, because both of those require you not to have the basketball. If you watch most kids today and they walk into a gym, if there's 18 kids, there's probably 18 basketballs with them versus you get a ball and I rebound for you while you move and those types of things. And so I think that's one of the challenges right now is they all pay somebody to train them. They all have an AU coach. They all have another guy. So if you're not in the top three or four people that are the decision makers in their life, it's really hard to have influence on them. But I think spacing is very difficult to teach because uh, a lot of people ball watch and they need the ball, and then cutting being the second. So we use the 3 point line. We have an NBA 3 point line in Warsaw at the Tiger Den, and we've left it there. We use it for spacing purposes. We use the volleyball line for a number of things defensively in our zone. And so we try to use those as markers for very specific reasons. But those are two very difficult things. I think you have to show film on them. I think you have to show what you want, not what you don't want, when it comes to cutting and spacing when you're trying to create offensive systems.
Yeah, we're kind of a well, not kind of, we're a dribble drive system, and one of the hardest things, and it's not just the younger kids, the high school kids as well, is teaching them how to create a gap and where those gaps would be when you're trying to show them what you want to create, and then defensively where you want to fill those gaps in, obviously. But offensively speaking, we've got a phrase: does the guy with the ball, does he need help or does he need space? And um, so rather than, especially with the younger kids, because like Coach just mentioned, they all want the ball in their hands, so everybody gets 2 feet from them and screams for the ball. Uh, so teaching them to be patient is probably, I know it's a general term, but what we try to work with on the sixth, seventh, and eighth graders especially is to catch the ball and give it just a 1,001, 1,002 count and let the other teammates make you space before you do something with the ball. And that little pause kind of forces them to wait, watch, and then if nobody's moving, you'll get the sharper kids will start telling them to move and create space. I don't know that's the end all be all of it, but those two things seem to help with our younger kids, both asking them the question, does he need space or does he need help? And if he needs space, you need to create him a gap, and then needs to drive the gap. And then if you have the ball, you need to have patience enough to wait just 1,000, 1,002 count, let them create you a gap before you do anything else with it.
Y'all are gonna think I'm nuts, but what we do is we take three different kinds of court paint, like court chalk. We have red, green, and yellow, and so we'll actually put down on the floor like a box is green, a box is yellow, and a box is red. Red's where you never want to be. Green's where it's okay to be, and yellow is you got 1 second, you're in there, and then you're out. It helps our younger kids with spacing because I call it the dead area, which is the area between the 3 point line and the block on the baseline. I call that the dead area. Nothing good really ever happens there.
Mhm.
And so I put red there, and if a kid's there just standing there, he knows he's in the wrong area. He needs to get to a green. And then if a kid's in a yellow, he needs to knows he needs to cut to a green, not cut to a red, cut to a green. So you put the green in like a corner, green on a wing, green at the top, green in the paint. because you're trying to get paint touches. The entire paint's green. And so that kind of helps kids when they're younger. And we actually use it with our high school kids too in the summertime, just when they're working on our 5-on-0 offense, because it helps them know, hey, I'm in the wrong area and I got to get out. Red alert, red alert. I got to get to a green. Yellow, I got to get out of here quick. So it makes them cut, And so like one of the things that we got to when I was here the first year was kids like on dribble handoffs. All they want to do is come around and get the handoff, no matter where it is. They could be at half court and they're going to come get it instead of cut. And so we actually put like yellow around that. Like if a dribble handoff, if you have to go outside the 3-point line to like the volleyball line for the handoff, that's red. Like you got to cut to a green. You're in the yellow area, you got to cut to a green. So that kind of helped us out a little bit. And eventually, you don't have to do it anymore with the high school kids, but the younger
I like that.
we do that. So.
Okay, so that's really interesting. The parts in the court, I like that. It's pretty cool. Visual is always good for kids. So I know for our program, as the season progressed, we would add layers to our offense, add new out of bounds plays, things of that nature. So, coaches, what do you guys do as the season goes on to make adjustments or to add layers to your offense to make yourself tougher to scout or to prepare for end of season?
I'll go first this time. Um, so we have a tiered system offensively. So like if we get a miss, we're trying to score in the first 7 seconds. So we get a miss, we're trying to push down the floor, score in 7 seconds. We're running two guys to the corners, two to the wings. And then if the I stop my bigs at the nail. I know that this is like a big point of contention, but like my thing is if my big's not directly in front of their big for a layup, I stop them at the nail because I'm trying to get to the rim, the ball to the rim. And if I put two bigger bodies down there, it's kind of defeating the point, right? Like, and then what it actually does is if we don't score right away, every big's taught in transition to do what? Run to the rim, right? And so it helps our drag situation because the big's always late to the drag, right? Late to the ball screen. So we do that quite a bit, run there to the nail. If we don't score there, we have transition options. So we have some secondary options that are quick hitters out of that. And then on dead ball, and then we're into our flow out of that. And then dead balls, we have a place that, and dead balls, and if it gets stagnant, I'll call it play. But we have about probably close to 200 plays that we'll put in by the end of the year. But when I say 200 plays, it's really probably only 20 maybe. It's just out of different alignments. So our guys all know what certain words mean when I say them. If I say a lock, they know, it's a lock screen for, out of a certain set that we run, whether it's zips or suns or whatever it is. It's just a different set. And so as we go on through the year, we'll put in, as opposed to putting in different plays, we'll just put in different starting areas for it. So it might be out of horns or it might be out of something different. And that really has helped us out because it makes it harder to scout where, hey, they got 200 plays, well, really, it's like, we might throw something. We might this practice or this game we might do just horns and staggers away as opposed to something different. And you're just not really sure, but they're all the same thing anyway.
And we're close to the same. We don't have near 200 plays. I think I'd get run out on a rail if I threw that many at my kids, um, but no, we do the same thing. We start out very basic, and then by game five, everybody's got figured out kind of what you're doing, and then rather than changing the base offense, we'll just take two or three rules out of that base offense. If I drive at the wing's supposed to cut back door, and we will kind of create kind of a motion off of just those movements. And we'll do that for 2 3 possessions and then go right back to what we were doing before, which is just kind of a free 4 round 1 dribble drive. And to help with people scouting you on that, we'll change that every couple of weeks, and then people that are watching the game film will see a little bit different look. And I think it's very similar to what Coach Strine just said, that it's not that many plays, but it would look like it just because of you're using um, changes just based off two or three moves off of that base offense, and we'll do something very similar to that.
One thing we've gotten into, which I don't know if it works or not, but I like it. Um, if I know like Bates still scouting us and he's been at some games recently, most coaches are living a game or two out typically. At least that's how we've done it before the opponent you play. So if you've only watched the last 2 or 3 games, and we're about to play you, we'll go a different direction, maybe offensively with some things that we've done. So we have a lot of driving plays, we have back cut plays, we have post up plays, we have 3-point plays, and we have continuity plays. And so if we've been living in, let's say, our chin series for the last 2 or 3 games, and I think you're going to probably spend a lot of your time in practice focusing on guarding that, we may not run that at all. We may just live in our ball screen continuity, or we may live in just our driving plays or our, whatever it may be. And so we've had a lot of success, especially in the first half of games, getting ahead of teams because I think we probably attacked them differently than what they probably anticipated based on their scout. And I think the variety has been good. And then the adjustments that we would make, I think, as you get into the season, we probably change our out of bounds plays quite a bit as we get into maybe every 3 to 4 games. We'll get a new series in. A series is typically a package of 4 plays, and then those evolve. And the ones that we score a high rate on, we may keep, we may tweak them, we may change from a flat to a box to a diamond, whatever that may be. But ultimately, all of us, we have the staples that we love, and we just kind of tweak them based on, I think, the talent we have, and then where we're at in the season.
We'll do kind of the same thing with our groups of sets. We call them series also, and we'll do the same. We'll run a 3 or 4 or 5 zipper sets off that movement for 2 or 3 games, and then we'll move to something else. So I'm glad to hear somebody else does that. But we'll do the same thing for about 2 games, maybe 3 games, and then we'll throw a different series in and run that for. And that's a way we build also because we don't put all those in at once. We'll put those in just kind of the week that we're ready to start using them, and then we'll use those for a couple games and then change also.
Yeah, we call them families, but what we actually do sometimes too is, especially early on in the year, we'll run the same plays just out of different alignment. So maybe it's 1-4 low for a couple games, and all of a sudden it's a box. It's the same play, you just run out of a different alignment. So
Mm-hmm.
teams off, they'll see a box and they'll think, wait, we haven't seen this before, but it's the same play. But I think the one thing that we do that I think is, and actually something that I learned in college was, the terminology is huge. Like we don't call plays like, hey, we're not running Xavier or Duke or anything like that. We're running something that has the same terminology so we can run it across, that's in the play. So for instance, we call a flare screen a wave, so like if we run a
Mhm.
play that has wave in it, we might run, zips wave, and they know, hey, we're in our zips family, and it's a wave action out of it, so they know what to do. That's been kind of unique. And then one other thing I was going to say about out of bounds plays, when I was at Lamar University, we actually only had 3 out of bounds plays, but it was based on the clock. If the second number in the clock, in the seconds clock, was an odd number, it'd be a certain place. Even number, it'd be a certain play. And if it was a zero, it was a certain place. So you never had to call one. The guy just had to look up at the scoreboard and know what they were running every time. So then it would help with scouting because teams didn't know what you were doing because you never called a play.
Hmm.
I think our basketball IEPs would kick in at that point. We'd have too many turnovers, and I'd use all my timeouts before halftime.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe.
I was going to say the same thing. I think you got a lot of smart players, but Coach Moore, for you specifically, when you do that through the course of the season and you're getting into the tournament, especially when you advance in the tournament, how are you determining, take us into your mindset? Is it basically just based on scout and then what you're going to go to offensively versus that specific opponent in the tournament? Or based on what you felt like your kids were in the best throughout the year? How do you decide what you're going to run?
I
It's crunch
pro
time there in the tournament.
my gut would tell me I spend a lot of time scouting coaches, not teams. So I want to know your tendencies. Like what are you changing after a timeout? When are you going to call your timeouts? The things that you like to do specifically in situational basketball, like all of us, I think, live in those tendencies. So I am probably going to make my adjustments based on you. Um, we've had some fantastic games with Northridge, and I think Scott Radiker's as good as there is. We've been fortunate; we're 6-1 against them at Warsaw since I've been here. We've had every game is down to the wire, and I think I was at Kokomo when he was at Lafayette Jeff, and he got the better of me there, and I've learned some things about him, and so I think a lot of the game it is player tendencies, but coaches have tendencies too. And so I really try to lean into that. And I spend a lot of my energy trying to, coaches I admire a lot. Like I watch them and I try to gather information from them, both in wins and in losses. And so that's kind of how I approach it.
really interesting. Good point to make and something I'd never thought of. That's really cool. I want to open this up. We've talked about drills, talked about offense. Do we have anybody that has any other questions?
I'm taking a guess that you guys all coach guys on how you're talking about like all your drills and stuff like that. Coaching girls, the memorization of how to run plays is so robotic to them. How do you get your players to memorize plays and understand where to be at what time?
I
Uh,
Well,
give
go ahead, coach.
I give my kids homework, especially early in the season. They need to take everything that we've put in up to that point. They need to go draw them out. They need to then explain at the bottom of the drawing, where the ball's supposed to go and where the players are supposed to go, so they each know everybody else's job. And then we grade that stuff when they come in. Um, and then we'll spend a lot of time in the film room going over those same things. But I have found that if they have to go draw those up and bring them in and then explain it in front of the team, they're more apt to get them figured out quicker than just coming in and running through the sets.
Yeah, we do something similar. All of our plays are on something we call hoop ski. So our players can all go on there and they go on and listen to it and or not listen to it, but watch it because it's animated. But one of the things that I think is important, no matter what play you run, and so like we'll go over it in practice, but you got to tell the kids what they're looking for, why they're
Mm.
doing it, where certain things are going to be. So if we're going through a play, I'll tell them, hey, the play is going to be behind you because this is the guy that's going to tag. This is why we're doing it because they're in this type of ball screen coverage. And I think if you do that, they're much more able to understand why they're doing something. Like kids today, I think they want to know why they're doing it. They want to understand why. So having that in there, I think, is important. But our kids study it just like Coach said. And then we watch the film with it, and then go over it in practice quite a bit.
I would add to that. I heard this quote long ago. You coach people and you teach basketball. And when you have really good players, I think you spend more time coaching the people. That they're talented, they're skilled. You're helping make adjustments. When you're young or you're not very experienced, I think you're spending more time teaching basketball. And for me, one of the areas I feel like I've grown is helping teach progressions, specifically on offense. I think sometimes, let's say there's a play that you're running in transition. We go 5 trips. So you're going to go down, back, down, back, down. So you're going to have 5 offensive possessions in a row. You're always going to start with the last option first. So they're going to have to get all the way through it every time. Because I think oftentimes is if you're just, if you're getting the first option on every action that you run, uh, everybody knows they're not going to get the ball, so they don't really complete the offensive action, right? So, if there's 3 options in any half court set, like
You would have to say this most work.
we're getting the last option first, and we're building it backwards from there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I have the opposite sometimes. They refuse to look at the back screen and just try to get into the second action where they can get a ball screen out of it. I'm like, no, we're trying to get the layup first, coach.
That too.
Any other coaches have any questions before we jump to defense? Alrighty. So I usually have found that coaches are more so offense or more so defensive minded. I didn't play like a defense as a player, but for some reason I liked focusing on defense as a coach. Um, and I think I want to start off by saying or asking this question. Do you find yourself as coaches being a limited number of defenses, but we do them really well? Or do we have a wide array of defenses? So where do you guys lie on that?
We try to stick with about two that we do really, really well. And then I will put several others in. And what we do with our others is, after a timeout, especially if the other team has called a timeout, we will make that change to something that we either don't run a lot or they haven't been able to scout much because they haven't seen it. And we'll run that for a set number of possessions, and then we go right back to what we were doing before. So at the level of play that we're a 1A school, so at that level it's pretty successful because a lot of those kids, um, they could call a timeout, explain what to do, and then as soon as they walk out on the floor and see something different, they've lost whatever they talked about in the timeout. So we'll throw something in. We may not be all that good at it, but we'll only do it 2 or 3 possessions, and then we go right back to what we were doing before, just to counter whatever that coach had changed during that timeout. So, but yeah, typically we stick with about 2 defenses that we do really well.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we stick with one early in the season. We're changing things a little bit this year. I lost a 6'8" kid that was our all-time leader in blocks, so had to change it up a little bit. He's up at Bethel now, so I changed it up a little bit, but we'll stay with that. As the season goes on, I'll add a second defense, a zone of some sort. But for us, we're just we're too like we can't slog it out with people, especially the teams that we play. We're always, we're typically the smaller team, so we try to pressure and try to, make, cause havoc that way. And then, but like Coach said, after timeouts, every once in a while, midway through the year, we'll start to throw in some zone type stuff just to throw them off from their normal stuff. But we're trying just to cause as much chaos as possible in what we do.
I heard a while ago, you either need to be better or you need to be different. And it's a lot easier to be different. And for us, I think it comes down to like effort versus understanding. If we can, whatever that different may be, whether that's we've become a zone team. We've played 44 games in a row where we've played zone the entire game, and we've been pretty good at that. Um, but we're different, and because it's what we do, our effort and our understanding both can be very very high. I think it's difficult to get both of those on the same level that we want. Sometimes there's an understanding, but there's not the effort, or sometimes there's the effort, but there's not the understanding. And so I think that's the magic sauce defensively is if you don't have the talent to be better than people you're playing, at least be different because it's a little bit easier to be different.
So let me ask you this. So based on what you guys were responding, what are some of the core habits that you guys teach from day one that kind of carries through your defense?
One of our biggest thing is you have to show your hands. We do a drill every day called chest drill where it's just you and another person on the wing, and you got to cut them off, hit them with your chest, and show your hands wide. And you're just going back and forth for a couple minutes. Then we blow the whistle, or I mean, probably about a minute. Then we blow the whistle. You grab the ball and you transition down to the other end. But the biggest thing is just getting your chest in front. Staying in front. Too many kids I see now, like if a crossover is coming, they're putting themselves out of position with their hands. Your hands will take you out of position. If you reach for the ball, your shoulder moves and the rest of your body moves. Now you're out of position. So we tell guys, hands wide, play with your chest. Your chest will lead you into keeping a guy in front. So we do that every day.
Yeah, we do the same thing, almost with the exact same verbiage. We teach meet with the chest, again with the arms out because we've got the same problem. Kids like to play with their hands in towards their core versus out, and they can't figure out why they get those calls at game time. Um, the other thing that we have really pushed hard is getting away from the old zigzag stuff you don't want to get away from a defensive slide totally, but we call it a sprint step, and essentially instead of taking a big long lead step with a slide, we've trying to teach these kids to turn and sprint, to get in front of the ball and get the ball turned. And we don't even try to turn the ball so much as we do just try to guide them into what we call the gutters, which is out by the sidelines, and try to keep them out there. But all of that starts with meeting with the chest, and then we teach tremendously tough ball pressure, and you got to trust that you've got that second layer of defense um, behind you, so you can stay up on the ball and not feel like you've got to give them 6 or 8 feet of room so they can figure out a way to beat you. But we do a lot of little basic things like that where probably a more advanced team work a little deeper than that. But for us, we've got to stay fairly basic with things like that.
Like for us, it's been guarding the ball. I think that's a very difficult thing to teach. Sometimes it's a want to. A lot of guys don't grow up with that being their identity. Um, but it is the one thing that I think every coach is going to value if they have somebody that can guard the ball and not require help. I like what Cam said because I think it's very valuable because the idea of sliding to guard the ball, it's we got a lot of people that can get downhill. There's double gaps. There's all things going on. You got to be able to move your feet, right? And you got to be able to do that without fouling. I think a lot of kids foul, and so the more physical you can be without fouling, the more consistency you can have on that side of the ball. I think that's a big thing. And then off the ball, you got to be able to see the next play. I think just like offensively with spacing, sometimes people ball watch. I think you got to be aware of what's going on, whether you switch or don't switch, like being able to see the next play and be able to anticipate what they need to do to get ready to defend whatever that next action is.
And something else we do, that to you guys' point of guarding the ball, when I was at the University of Richmond, every day we would do one-on-one from the wing in front of the whole team. So you're one-on-one against each other. And so that was good. And I took it over to Tri West, and it's just you and another guy, and you gotta stop him in front of the whole team. And you're just that guy's trying to beat you to the rim. You can't allow him to go middle. You gotta wall up and make him make a tough shot, and then you gotta go rebound out of it. And just putting that kind of peer pressure. I mean, I know peer pressure is not a great thing all the time, but in this case, I feel like it is. You want to get the stop against your teammates, against a teammate in front of your other teammates. And we make a big deal about it. Guys get hyped about it, and it makes our guys want to guard. I think that's part of it too. Guys just got to want to guard. And I don't think a lot of kids want to do that. It's a desire thing. So we do that, and I've seen our guys get better progressively defensively with that too.
All right, I'm going to switch gears to our last topic here. So moving from defense, obviously, what are your opponents doing? How are you going to stop them? And all the different principles that you guys are using. But, how are you using opponents' film, and what are you pointing out in your film for your players? One thing I found with my scouting reports early on in my career was I was way over their heads. So trying to find ways to get the main points and that we want to hit and things that we want to take away while simplifying at a level that high school kids can understand and I can hold their attention and film. All those things were challenging. So coaches, I based on the level of detail that you've had and a lot of the things you've said, I don't know if that's the way it is in your programs or not, but what are some points that you make in scouts to prepare for your opponents?
I would say I've shifted a great deal in this area. I used to be very focused on team stuff, like what are the things that you are trying to run. Um, and now I would say it's 90% player scout specific, like tendencies. And here's why. I think we can scheme up the best defensive whatever. It's going to come down to, can we guard your best players doing his favorite thing, or can we prevent him or her from getting to their spot or getting the basketball? So I've really adjusted probably in the last 6 or 7 years to be able to um, we'll still try to get an idea what the team's trying to do, but again, playing zone now, it really cuts down your preparation, and now it is tendency based, and so it's really benefited us, I think. Um, we know what we're going to guard and how we're going to guard certain actions in our zone, and so we don't have to spend as much time prepping for your team versus your players.
Yeah, I'm the exact same way when it comes to that. Like, my job is to know what you guys are going to do out of a timeout or what they're going to do with this, that, or the other. The player's job is to know what the players do. So our players get a lot of player stuff, but then as a coach, I'll go through and see, what Coach Garrett does a bunch. Does he set a lot of screen to screeners? Does he set a lot of UCLA screens? Does he set back screens? And we'll actually do that in our vitamins. So, like, let's say that we're playing somebody that, they run a lot of flex options. We'll guard the flex every day in our vitamins. I'll never tell our guys that the other team's playing it. They just know how to guard it. Because I feel like if you're saying, oh, they run this play, this play, this play, that's all their guys are looking for the entire game. And if there's ever a wrinkle, of any sort, then they're kind of out of it. So I just give the guys different actions to guard that I've seen them run, whether it's, whatever. So they run stagger screens. How are we going to how do we guard stagger screens just in general, no matter what the game is? And that's kind of helped our guys out a little bit. It's let them play a little bit faster where they're not trying to think through everything. They just kind of are reacting to what we've done every day. And then, it helps out them knowing the players then. Okay, well, there's a stagger away and their best shooter's coming off. I don't know that. I mean, I know that on a stagger screen, I'm supposed to get up there anyway. Now I know that their best player's coming off. I got to get there a little bit harder anyway. So that's helped us out a little bit as opposed to just giving these guys, hey, here's our 4 best sets. And now if they run something different, we're totally out of it. So that's helped.
I don't think I'm much different than what these other two have just said. I spent a long time as a JV coach before I got a head coaching job, and myself and the assistant coach at the time for about the last 7 years, we would kind of outdo each other. One game was his to scout, one was mine to scout, and we would try to come up with the best scouting report that we could hand the boys in the locker room and it helped me a lot to do it that way. But we would know exactly what out of bounds play you're going to run after a timeout. We would know what you're going to run in the third quarter if you had a side out of bounds play, that kind of thing. We knew all the names of everything. But I kind of grew to come to the realization that the kids really don't pick up on that same stuff. They don't live and breathe this stuff like we do. And it was not a waste of time, but it was not really a good use of the kids' time to sit there in the locker room and go through those scouting reports with them because we give them a copy of it, and 99% of the time you'd walk in the locker room afterwards and they'd be laying on the floor. So I have shifted since I've gotten become a head coach in the last couple of years, and I focus a lot more on what we're going to do. That's one of the reasons is I don't remember which coach mentioned it, but that's one of the advantages to only running one or two defenses because we don't have to prepare anything for that. That's what we're going to run, and we know we're gonna defend ball screens a certain way. We're gonna defend ball screens on the side a certain way. We're gonna defend handoffs a certain way, and we take that out of the mix, and it cleans up a lot of what we have to work on during the week. Just like talking about the flex motion stuff, we'll do the same thing. If we've got a certain team that makes lots of back cuts, for example, we'll practice guarding back cuts all day, each day of the week, but I don't tell them that's what we're doing. But I do give each of them a notebook when we do go watch film, and that's exactly what they're watching. Is what these other two guys have said is they watch tendencies for the players that we tell them they might be guarding. And then they look for ways that they can either defend those tendencies or take advantage of those tendencies. And that's what I want them to write down in those notebooks. And then we'll compare those things each day after we watch film and try to adjust our defenses that way. But that's really, we don't spend a lot of time adjusting what we're going to do. We want teams to adjust to us.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that you just got to get your guys to play fast. I think your girls to
Yeah.
play fast. I think, there's paralysis by analysis at times, like, when I was at Cleveland State, my boss wanted those guys to have like 25 to 30 page scouting reports. Like it was every guy had a page or two, every play they had, everything that they did. And they go in again, our guys would get so confused, they forget what we were doing, let alone what the other team was doing. So, I just think that, like you said, coach, just keeping it simple for them and let them play fast, let them have instincts. It's a reactionary game, and so I think that you got to let them react quickly and not overthink things.
Awesome stuff, guys. Want to open it up again to questions. Coaches, we have on defense and scouting. Any questions?
I have a question for you younger coaches. It's so nice to have huddle where you're not driving to get film, you're not manually breaking down film, manually entering shot charts, etc. But I'm curious. I know over my career, I went from kind of what Coach Strine just kind of thick packets of scouts. I'm almost exclusively video based now. I'm curious how you guys. What does your scout look like, paper versus video, etc.?
Well,
So ours is,
I hate the new huddle. I don't know if it's
I do
just
too.
me or if I'm a moron,
Amen.
but
It's terrible.
Agreed. Agreed.
the new changes to me have just irked me, and so I'm not going to be a good answer to this question. I'm sorry.
So what we do is we have a group team chat or a team group chat. It's on I forget which one. It's on one of the. It's green. I don't remember what it's even called. But we do. So we have like a paper one. We don't print it out. We put it in there. So it's a digital copy. But then we also put the video copy that we're going to show them in practice. We put it in there so they can watch it on their phones whenever they want. And that's helped us out a ton because kids will be on the bus on the way to the game and they'll be watching the film again, and watching what guys are doing and watching what we want them to see. So we started doing that, and plus it's nice because we send it, and then I can check and see if they even opened it or not, if they even looked at it, so I can know, hey, like you haven't watched 1 second of this stuff. So um, I don't know how to do it. One of my assistants does it for me, but it's actually been pretty good for us.
Tommy, when do you give that to them? If you play on Friday, when are you giving them their scout?
Well, it depends. Do we play before? Like if this is Monday, um, I have my coaches have the scouts done usually a week before, so I'll give that to them on Monday, and they'll have that all the way through Monday, and it's just the players. So they're just watching players, none of the plays. Like I said, the plays are stuff that I'll have them go over without them even knowing. But they'll have that stuff in their phone, and then we'll talk about it probably Wednesday. And then usually by the time I get in there, now early in the year last year we weren't able to do this, but I'll give it to them Monday. I'll get in there Wednesday to go over it with them in our locker room over the film, and I'll actually quiz them before I even show it. Hey man, what's number four do? And they'll be able to tell me that because they've already watched it those couple days before, and then I can add in my 2 cents as to what else they do that they don't know about or that they didn't say. So it's been good. It's get guys in the mindset early in the week to get ready for this game on Friday, which has been good.
Yeah, we do something similar. We watch film on Mondays. Mondays is kind of a light day for us, especially if we've played a double on the weekend before. So we will run through practice, and then we'll take a half hour, 45 minutes, and we'll spend time go through a team meeting and then a film session. But we've got a couple different whiteboards in the locker room, and starting on that Monday, I think somebody mentioned it. I don't know if it was Huddle or a different program that Coach Strine was talking about. You could see how much the kids are in and watching. Well, I watch that stuff in Huddle, and I don't set a certain amount of time that they have to watch, but I need to see that they're in there watching some film. And then I'll just ask in the middle of practice, what does number 23 do when he catches the ball on the right side of the wing? Who are my shooters we need to know? And then I do have them when they come in each practice as they're getting ready in the locker room. They each need to add to the board that they noticed something about some player. And then by the end of the week, that board is chock full of little tidbits that we go over every night at the end of practice, and then that should be in their notebooks as well.
Something we did this year too. I don't know if it'll work or not, but I tried it. When we knew we were playing Decatur Central first coming up on Wednesday, I gave all the guys one person to watch from Decatur Central. And so we had 5 games on there in August, and I knew the guys that were going to play varsity, so I gave them all a player, and they all had to do scouting reports on them. And then last Friday, they gave me the scouting reports on that individual player that I gave them. So they kind of had an idea before. I'll actually go over with them on Monday, kind of the rest of it, but they already had been watching this stuff and put together their film on that, or not their film, but their written out scouting report on that guy. So again, I think part of it is you just gotta, part of our jobs is if these kids want to play in college, like a lot of my guys do, they don't know how to study film, and so give them the opportunity to do it themselves, I think is important.
Awesome. Well, we are getting close on our hour here. So, first of all, I want to thank the three of you guys for hopping on and giving us such awesome feedback on all the different questions. You guys were amazing and in depth, and I really appreciate your time. So, couple of cleanup items here. We are going to have a follow-up email, and this is really open to anybody, but I would really encourage our three expert panelists as well to share any drills, offensive, defensive, or scouting principles that you would like. It's hard to talk through them sometimes, but if you have like physical examples or anything on paper that you want to share with our entire mentor program, I think that'd be really awesome. We got some great feedback after our first video. Um, last video is coming up on January 18th. That's going to be kind of like a tournament prep. We've got two topics before that. So we've got culture, midseason focus, handling ups and downs coming up on December 1st. And then we've got tournament prep mindset and peaking at the right times after that, leading us into that video. So I know the girls' seasons are well underway now, and boys are really just kind of getting up and going. But I just hope that everything is going well for everybody, whether you're a new coach or a veteran coach. And we've got really important jobs as coaches. So I appreciate you guys sacrificing your time to be on here tonight. Is there anything anybody else wanted to say before we close out tonight? All right. Well, thank you guys so much for your time. Have a great week coming up and happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.